All right, hello everybody. This is Malcolm Hawker, host of the CDO Matters podcast, and what you're getting today is an abridged, shortened version of the podcast. I'm here with my friend, the data whisperer, Mr. Scott Taylor. We are at the CDOIQ Conference here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, just next door to the MIT campus. The annual gathering of chief data officers talking about all things data strategy, data governance, data management, future of, you name it. Couldn't be more thrilled to speak at the conference yesterday and to hear my friend Scott talk this morning and share his insights how to tell your data story within your organization. So, Scott,
Malcolm,
thank you for being here.
thanks for having me here.
This will be your third time now on the CDO
So
Matters
this is officially
podcast.
a third.
Yeah, I think so. We'll do a
Well.
short version. This is not going to
Might
be
as
the
well.
usual 45-minute long version here, but
good.
it'll be a shortened version. But this will be Scott's third time. He's a veteran. He was my first guest going back to the amazing TWA Hotel,
Right.
on the tarmac of JFK in New York. He was my guest for the 20th episode of CDO Matters.
So this must be the 40th.
I don't know where we are. We're probably in the 30s.
In the 30s, okay. Never trust a podcast over 30. You know, that's what they say.
Really? Okay. Well, so be it. But he's a favorite because he's entertaining and he's smart and engaging and charming and he's all the things that you would want in a podcast guest.
And I always come on your podcast because that's the intro I get. So I need, me.
It's fun. It's fawning,
no
but
end
it's earned.
Of stroking. I'm happy for it.
It's earned fawning.
I appreciate it.
So we just finished our annual swag review. We're going through all the swag that we picked up at the conference, fun stuff. So there'll be separate content on the swag review on Scott's channel, on his LinkedIn channel. But we're going to talk about kind of key takeaways of what are some of the themes that we've been hearing at the conference. Why don't we start kind of high level? Let's just start with the vibe, the energy, the engagement, the number of folks. So kind of what's the vibe been? What have you've been taking away from the last 3 days?
Wonderful place to start. It's been fabulous.
Yeah.
I thought. I mean, really dynamic. There's kind of like almost an electricity in the room here. A lot of people here, a lot of folks online, but hundreds here. A lot of suppliers, so that amps up the energy. The fact that we're all physically located in the same place and people aren't wandering off the MIT campus looking for, this room and not finding it and coming back and seeing no lunch and all the rest of it. So it's good idea to just be on a regular event-based location like the Hyatt. And a lot of these sessions have been well attended. I've been seeing a ton of folks, which is just fabulous. So meeting a lot of people who I've known for literally years digitally. And now I'm seeing them in person. I know you in person for many years, but there were a lot of folks basically, when you know somebody for 3 years and you've never seen the side of their face, that's an interesting experience, like much less their legs.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
You've got legs!
Look at that profile. You never see that. You're always full on. So that's been fun.
Yeah. So for me, being in the hotel, everybody in one spot has been good. It kind of compressed everybody into one space. Certainly a lot more vendors this year than in the past. As a vendor, of course, I certainly don't mind that. I love the opportunity to talk about products and to see what's going on in the vendor space. These hotels certainly aren't cheap, so the vendors are most certainly needed. It seems like there's a lot of vendors, though. So I'm not sure that's problematic. It's just that you sit down to lunch and you having networking and what's going on with you. A lot of those conversations have been with vendors. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And again, these conference hotels are not cheap, so they have to be paid for. And as a vendor, I guess I should be more supportive.
There was a general kind of lower buzz around. There's a lot of exhibitors here.
Yeah.
Both from the attendees who are the practitioners and data leaders, as well as some of the vendors. It was like, wow, there's a lot of people here, and they had the drinks over in the big room, and if I'm in the big room, that's good. But actually, my booth is over by the front desk in the lobby. There's literally people are spilling out, and as soon as you walk in, they're like, "Hey,
it's right there.
Let's fix your data. What's your data strategy?"
And we've basically taken over this entire hotel.
So that's and me just as kind of a floater, I'm just happy to be here and see a lot of folks. But
we'll leave the floater reference behind.
I could understand that some people are probably like, But
Yeah.
there's a balance, and events, physical events are roaring back. So there's pent up demand, and there are a good number of people here who this is their first
Yes.
physical event that they've gone to. You know, I'm doing events for a living, so not quite, but still exciting to see so many data folks who are like physically present.
Yes.
However, what my session was virtual, although
Interesting.
I was
Yeah.
physically here, so I guess I was virtually physical. Which was a little odd. I appreciated you coming.
virtually physical. I'm
Yeah,
having
at a
like this
studio
digital
audience.
Olivia Newton-John moment here.
But, you know, I like to be in front. But, you know, you do what you got to do. And,
Yeah.
and it was fun. But
It's been great. It's always great to spend time with practitioners, to spend time with CDOs and hear what's going on, hear what they're working on, talk about priorities. One of my key takeaways, you know, kind of getting to the number of people here, has been a lot of first timers, right? A lot of people to the first time to this conference, and a lot of really new CDOs, right? Particularly in the government space, where there are government departments and agencies that are kind of mandating that CDOs have to be, that the role has to be there. So that's a really good thing, and it's a really good thing that those folks are coming to these events, because there is a great mix of kind of the first timers and newer CDOs and folks that have been around a while, right? When you have the ability to sit down and have coffee with the Tom Redmonds or the Tom Davenports or other folks who have been doing this a long time, who are not just practitioners but also educators, right? Like that's
really giants. Giants in the space are just
Yeah.
milling around, so that's nice to see.
You know, it's kind of uncanny. Like I have like these minor fanboy moments where it's like, you know, a week ago I'm reading this fantastic article by Tom Davenport on LLMs and how to modify LLMs using smaller data sets and maybe even corporate data sets, and I was like, man, this is awesome stuff. And then I sit down this morning and have coffee with Tom Davenport, right? And the guy who wrote the HBR article. And so there's those moments of serendipity here, not just from thought leaders, but also from practitioners in the space, right? Where you get to hear in panel discussions. That was one of my better, kind of like my favorite discussions, and it has been for the last couple of years. These panels where they get the CDOs, in this case, the CDO of Colgate-Palmolive, right, talking about how she has overcome some of her biggest challenges. You get the CDO of Visa talking about some of his bigger challenges.
Mars Wrigley was here, right?
Yeah,
Head analytics in the data office there.
Yeah.
So they had some real players and real big brands.
Absolutely.
Mixed in with other smaller enterprises, but that you still hear that commonality. So for me, a lot of it's the validation of we're still struggling with some really basic fundamental problems. The newest thing out there to bridge into something that I saw was obviously LLMs are everywhere. How to use we've been talking about we've been talking about AI for a while, so it's not like, oh, we're suddenly seeing it like our relatives are going, what's this AI thing? But you think about what analysts in their predictions for 2023 in December last year, who called this? Right. I don't think anybody did.
No.
I don't know anybody was like,
nope.
In 2 months LLMs are going to take over. This is what's going to happen. So
nope.
It's an example of how something can just burst on the scene. And one thing I noticed for sure is it knocked the whole data fabric, data mesh debate off the front page of LinkedIn. So that was raging for a while. And now, who hears about it?
Right.
Last year there were 7 or 8 events or 7 or 8 sessions here that had the word data mesh, the term data mesh in the title.
It's
I don't think there were
fascinating.
any.
Yeah.
So nothing about that. You know me, I don't dig into the technology, but thanks to your session, I now know the difference between the fabric and the mesh, so thank you. But it's just representative of what can happen in this space when some big, new, giant, shiny idea just lands itself and we all just, student body left and we all kind of, oh, hey, here we go. So it's, and I think those of us with enough cynical background go, all right, what's next? And usually my usual take too is, all right, here's yet another thing that if the data sucks, it doesn't matter. But it's just emblematic of kind of the dynamics in our space.
Yeah, well, and so trace back December, right? How many CDOs had, artificial intelligence at the top of their data strategies, right? How many were really actually focusing on this? How many were building out data science teams? How many were kind of laying the groundwork for the operationalization? That's my nuclear. Operationalizing.
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 It's mine now too. I'll never be able to say it again. Thanks to you.
Anyway, point being, and it's a great point, is like these massive disruptions are happening faster and faster and faster and faster. And I suspect in another 6 months there'll be something else, right? Which really,
not.
well, who knows? I mean, it was the pandemic, it was supply chain, it was inflation. Now it's LLMs, and my goodness, what a challenge for business leaders and how to, I mean, I don't think you could ever fully anticipate a lot of these things. Some of the things I think you could, but how do you build out a strategy that is kind of disruption proof, right? I don't have all the answers to that, but at the core, I think that's what we mean by digital transformation. I think what we really mean, or what we should be saying at the very least, is how to build kind of a change-resistant or highly adaptive infrastructure, and how to build an adaptive strategy that can kind of fold to some of these changes, because we don't want another Hadoop, right? We don't want to just drop everything and drop off and chase that shiny object and chase this, although this is very real. AI is increasingly real. I said in my session yesterday that Hadoop is still looking for a business case, but there are high schoolers that are using ChatGPT to do their homework. So if that's not a validation of the use case, I don't know what is, but that's certainly a theme, right? LLMs, AI, of course. Another theme I'm struck by, I would love your take here, because you're a product guy. I would call you kind of a product guy.
Okay,
You worked on the product side of the house.
Product side, yeah.
And
Branding, product, the whole thing.
product marketing, branding, yes, but data products. I mean, it's right up there with AI. It may be number 2, maybe number 1 in terms of like the word cloud. Look forward to see what my friend Juan Cicada from Data.World does. He will usually do these word clouds. Looking forward to see what he has to say. But data products, I mean, it's everywhere. Everybody's talking about data products. What are you hearing the same?
Yeah, I'm hearing data products. I'm hearing confusion around what the word means. My immediate take on that terminology was it's not really a product like a product person would think of it. And so my challenge around, data products, data contracts, data monetization, those kind of words that mean something different in the ears of the audience. But the productization, this sort of the formalization of the way you use a clump of data, and something that you talk about a lot, which I think you can continue to push, the need for management of that through product management disciplines, which are well established.
Yeah.
So there's not a real wheel reinvention thing going on, and borrowing those disciplines from other areas to say, look, here's a bunch of data we use all the time for a lot of reasons. Let's productize that. Let's put some restraints around that so the understanding of it and the use of it and the value out of it is not something that's always questioned or debated. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's part of the essence of what that positioning does.
Well, that's right. And I think I'm okay. One of the things I'm struck by is that everybody seems to be defining data products slightly differently, or not necessarily have entire clarity on what that means. I don't get necessarily hung up on that. I tend to view data products as any data solution that solves a specific business problem that people would otherwise be willing to pay for. Like, it's that simple, and it can be that simple. But things get a little complicated when I think the product management discipline, the discipline of managing products, right? That's a thing. That is an actual discipline that has unique roles to support it, product management roles that are different than data management roles. The way product managers think is different than the way data managers think. And I think what we need to do as CDOs is to find ways to integrate product management disciplines. Because you can just slap a label on something and say it's a data product. That's not changing anything. Like, here's my data product. Okay, what does that mean to an end user, right? What does that mean from the perspective of user-centric design? What does that mean from the perspective of user enablement and training and all these things that product managers would usually do? That's what we need more of, and we need to have conversations around that. And just slapping a data product label on something is not inherently transformational. But product management, I think could be. So we need to talk a little bit more about that.
I think, you're welcome to edit this out if you don't agree with me, I think that could be your book.
All right. Data product management. Well, so truth be told, I was a chief product officer before I went headlong into the data and analytics space. I built out product teams. I managed products. So I think that could be interesting. I think we need more thought leadership there. I also think we need more thought leadership in ways to solve these old problems. It wasn't you that had mentioned this. Kevin Petrie, who had introduced me yesterday in my session, was talking about some of the old problems that we've been wrestling with for literally decades. And you touched on this in your presentation earlier. Data quality, master data management, right? Like just, getting value out of data, quantifying value out of data. Some of these old problems. So this is kind of key takeaway number 3 for me, is that while there's all this new stuff happening, some of the same old, some of these old problems are still really, really hard to solve, and we're still wrestling with, right? I was having conversations around the value of data, harkening back to our friend Doug Laney, and how do we actually start measuring this stuff, and still hearing, well, that's really, really hard, or maybe that's kind of not possible because there's indirect effects. So all of these hard problems, they're still there.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be focusing on those as well. So it's both. It's finding the balance. Don't run and chase the shiny thing, right? Don't forget the foundation. But I'm still kind of scratching my head a little bit on some of these issues that I think there are answers for. And when it comes to kind of establishing a data foundation, when it comes to valuing data, when it comes to better MDM and better data quality and improving your data culture, I think there are answers here. But I think we need to find a different way to deliver the message.
I hope so. Obviously, I agree with the different way to deliver the message part, but we hope that we can sort of crack the nut on some of these things finally. COVID helped just have shock some people into the reality of, oh, crap, we got to do e-commerce and we don't have any, our product data sucks. So I think some people got shoved into this, and there were a lot of data folks who were probably going, see, I told you, that thing I've been talking about for a while? And when you say what makes you disruptive, prove what sort of allows you to swing with the new things, it's not going to be a surprise to anybody to go, okay, build that foundation, have that foundation. That's why they call it a foundation.
Yep.
So you don't start thinking about pouring new concrete in your basement while the earthquake is happening. You either had it or you didn't, and you're trying to shore it up for next time if you didn't. But those are the things. That makes you resilient when you're not wondering, you're not looking around scrambling for the parts.
Yeah.
You're ready to go. You're armed with it to mix a bunch of metaphors, and then this new challenge comes up, and you're set. So it's a popular answer, a long-term answer, an answer we've always had, which is, better data is going to make it better, and focus on that foundational stuff.
Yep. One of the themes that I'm hearing, and this is not necessarily new, I just seem to be hearing more of it this year, and I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe I'm just more attuned to it, is this issue of culture and data culture. And I think that, we've long understood the culture and people and processes, but inherently, people. It's the old saying of culture eating strategy for breakfast.
Right.
I forget who said that.
And it's like, if it's not people, then what else is it?
Right.
Other than my chief dog officer, some of it's kind of like right there.
Yeah.
Duh, it's about people. 'Cause
Yeah.
we're all people.
Yeah. But in some of my conversations, I think that when it comes to culture, for a lot of data leaders, the assumption is, well, that's somewhere out there. Right? Like that's outside the data and analytics organization. That's the business. That's the culture is out there. And I'm really starting to think that we need to look a little more internal about culture, and that culture starts at home, and that if you're trying to drive cultural change, you need to start within your teams. And you need to start asking some difficult questions about, do you have a productive, conducive, supportive culture? Do you have a customer-centric culture? Do you have a product-centric culture? Or do you have a technology-centric culture? I think these are some of the questions we need to start asking, and we need to be looking inside and stop kind of looking at culture as this external thing that happens around us and to us, instead of looking more inside. So that I think that's interesting. One other thing I'd love your take on. Another key takeaway for me is I'm seeing a broader diversity of the humans here, right? I am seeing just a broader diversity from across the attendance, right? I am seeing far more gender diversity and diversity of every form, and I think that is a really, really positive thing.
Yeah.
I've been going to this stuff for years and years, and 20 years ago, people are looking an awful lot like you and me.
Yeah, bunch of old pale males here, but But I agree, which is nice. I mean, hopefully that's representative of the wider culture
Yes.
and environment here. But it's true. As more and more people get into data, data is clearly something that people are getting attracted to. I talked to a couple students, and it was nice to
Yep.
chat with them from a variety of different backgrounds, and the folks that you're mentoring and involved with, and a bunch of other. It's nice to see. So it's always nice to see if you're decades into a space, seeing some fresh blood and some new ideas and some
Exactly.
folks, also willing to learn and coming up. Well, what do you think? What would your one piece of advice be? And all that kind of stuff. So that's nice.
Yeah.
And I had that question a couple times, so that was.
Oh, that's
lovely.
cool.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I told him, learn how to tell a story. Okay, there's my advice. Pretty simple. Okay,
So
learn how to
critical.
tell a story. And the student I spoke to said, "Oh, you mean like presentation skills and community?" I said, "Yeah, but that's technique, which is important. But you could have, and this was my answer. You could have a great director, you could have all wonderful special effects, you could have the top actors, and the movie could still suck because the story sucks."
Waterworld.
So know that too. Know that the techniques are important, but you also need that content. You need that plot. You need that, way you're going to grab that attention regardless. And I start there.
Right.
So, you start there with, okay, is there a story? And it may sound cliche to some folks, but it always comes back to that. So if you can learn how to tell a story, you're going to be way ahead of most folks, regardless of whatever business you're in.
Yep. Long form and short form. So one of the challenges that I give, particularly to vendors, but this is true for everybody. This would be true for every CDO. If you ran into your CEO, or if you ran into anybody in an elevator, could you explain in 2 or 3 sentences exactly why you're doing what you're doing, right? And what value you expect to drive for the organization. Maybe you are a data professional and you're working in a stewardship role. Can you tell a story very, very quickly in 1 or 2 sentences that boils down why you're doing what you're doing, what's different, and the value it's going to drive for the organization? In a product parlance, we would call that a positioning statement. Right? Can you have a kind of a short 1 or 2 sentence description of why you're doing what you're doing, but also the things that you do, kind of longer form, right? The story that you're telling around process optimization or business transformation, so critical. So with that,
I got one more takeaway, which
Yes,
at
please.
the risk of kind of reciprocal fawningness, your session was just You nailed it, brother. Really, you killed it. And I don't mean that because I love this guy for a while. I mean it because that's why I was so interested. But you've just blossomed into this true evangelist. You held that group, your energy, the technique, which is, you always had the content. But I'm just so proud of you of just taking the room, physicality, different vocal patterns, changes, humor. You scared me at one point. I'm like, okay, I won't tell. You're right. But you
what
were
did I
just
do?
awesome. I'm so proud.
I took out
just,
this. Well, thank
really,
you so much.
really,
It's
he's there. He's got his wings. He's off, and there you go. He's just so pleased, so proud of him.
Thank you. Very, very, very kind. old friend. And this may sound pithy, but I actually really mean this. It's great that I can be delivering a message, and it's great that I can be in front of a group. But to me, it really is all about your success, CDO success, right? Because when you succeed, I succeed, and we all succeed. When the rising tide is going to lift all of the boats, and you're going to hear me more and more discuss things that may be slightly irreverent, maybe slightly. So what's another good word for that? I want to shake the fruit from the tree.
Yeah,
right. I think some of the
edge.
Yeah, some of the same old isn't really working. It isn't serving us very, very well, and we need innovation in how we manage our data and analytics teams. We need new ways of thinking, and we need new approaches to solve those old problems. Sorry, I was just pointing at your face. To solve those old problems.
I'm the old problem.
Yeah,
am I?
No. So what's exciting to me about your comments is not that I'm an effective public speaker, is that the message is received by you, and hopefully it's received by others. And I would invite you to check out, if you have access to the recording of my presentation here at CDOIQ. where I talk about some things that I think we need to be talking
The
about.
future of MDM. It was
Well,
great, and I learned stuff. As
But
usual,
I
so
did
that
veer
was nice,
into
too.
some other adjacent areas.
You did. You had
in
some
terms
serious
of,
veering.
Yeah,
going on.
yeah. In terms of things like being more customer driven, let's not be data driven. That's like Frito-Lay saying they're corn driven. Right?
Yeah, that was a great point. You said, like ingredient driven.
Ingredient driven.
Yeah,
No,
that
let's
was a
be
nice way to put
let's,
it.
Let's
Yeah.
be customer driven. Forget being data driven, because when you say that stuff to the business, speaking of stories, it's like, okay, you've been saying this for 20 years. What's really different? So, let's be more customer centric. Let's understand our customers. Let's assume positive intention of the business. Let's stop blaming data quality all the time, right? And the fact is, when it comes to a lot of data quality issues, perceived data quality issues, they exist because that data was optimized for a different use. It was optimized for an operational use, not an analytical use. And when we start to look at things a little bit differently in our space, I think it will free us to be innovative. I think it will free us from thinking that data quality is always the biggest problem, or data culture is always the biggest problem. If we start looking more inward, I think there's interesting exercises there. But I appreciate the comments.
It was great. You got the story. You got the delivery.
I appreciate
the world is your stage now.
Thank you.
Here.
With that,
I'll put on my Profisee glasses.
With that, I'll put on my Elton John. Who are these? This is swag, by the way. I'm not carrying these around.
These are not
this-
transition.
yeah,
I
no.
usually have so.
No, this is
a blur.
this is swag.
Right.
With that, thank you for tuning into this very short, abridged version of the CDO Matters podcast. To my long friend, Mr. Scott Taylor, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, as always.
And we will see you on another episode sometime soon. Bye, all.